Alright, this is SSLFamilyDad with Simple Suburban Living, and I've got a few projects coming up that are going to involve some basic plumbing and some sweating or soldering of copper piping. And so I figured I would start with the basics and just kind of show you how to do some basic soldering, some of the tips and tricks and tools that I use and have used for many years, and what's kind of worked for me. Okay, so we'll start by going through a few of the things that you're going to need, or a few of the things that are nice to have when you're getting into soldering copper and doing any type of plumbing work. With copper piping specifically, we'll start with the torch, and here I'm using a MAPP gas, M-A-P-P. This is a Burns-O-Matic torch head, and you can get all kinds of different torch heads. This one's I think $25 or $30. I'll try to put a link to this in the description as well. I've had this one for years and years. I'm sure there's nicer, newer ones out there, but this is a push-button electric start flame. It gives a real nice little rosebud, they call it, flame for soldering copper. So if you're going to get into soldering copper, I would definitely recommend having this on hand. I also use this as a fire starter for pretty much any fire. So these things work great and awesome to have around the house. So that's the torch that we're using today. Cutting copper pipe. There's a couple different cutters. This is your standard type of cutter here. These are for soft, soft cutting as copper, not for black pipe or gas piping, but just for copper pipe. This is a small one here. It goes up to probably maybe, I don't know, 1 inch copper pipe on that. And this is extremely handy to have if you don't have a small one like this. This is very helpful if you're into tight spaces. Especially if you're doing remodels and things like that. You're up against a wall and you've got your copper pipe, coming up against in a wall cavity or something like that. You can get in there and spin this around on it to cut the pipes off. So extremely handy to have a small cutter like that as well. As far as getting the pipe ready to be soldered, obviously you have to clean off. You'll see the kind of brown tint on the copper pipe there. All that oxidation needs to be cleaned off so you have a nice bare surface before you can solder. And you'll do that in a couple different ways. The cheap way is use like an emery cloth or even a fine sandpaper and twist around your pipe like that. And you can even use this in your fittings if you had to. It doesn't work quite as well and a little bit harder on the hands. An awesome tool to have is one of these little guys. I've had this for probably 15 or 20 years. It's probably due to be replaced, but it works very well. This is a combination 3/4 inch and 1/2 inch. So the inside part here is for your copper pipe. You stick it in and spin that around and it cleans off your pipe. The brush here is for your fittings. You stick that in there and spin that around and it cleans out the inside of the fitting. So very handy to have. These are very popular also, same type of thing. These are $4 or $5. You just, this has got a brush inside it. You just spin that around and it cleans off that copper pipe. And then you get a separate brush here for the inside of your fittings. These are nice to have too, but if you find one like this, this is the best way to go. Other thing that you'll have to have, obviously, is solder. Always use lead-free solder, of course, especially when you're doing anything with like potable water. You're going to be drinking through the copper pipe. Soldering paste. Apply that before you, obviously, before you solder. Other things that I like to have handy is a pair of channel locks. Old ones that you don't mind burning, because you may need these to, say, hold a pipe while you solder, or even pull fittings off if you're taking a fitting apart that's been soldered, lifting part pieces up that are hot and you need to cool them off. So this is very handy to have. I also always have a bucket of water standing by and some wet rags. I'll usually soak them in there and wring them out real good. Old t-shirts, socks, anything like that will work just fine. But you definitely want to have some wet rags handy to wipe off any excess solder and cool down your joints when you're finished. I also have a vise here that I use. I just mounted 2 pieces of wood. I use this as kind of a portable solution. I'll take this around with me whenever I want to just do some fittings like this, and that's what we're going to be using today to just do a practice couple joints here. So real handy to have is a little extra vise mounted to a block of wood. Just as a tip, I had this toolbox for, again, probably 15 years, and this is kind of my plumbing box. I always have everything I need to do copper soldering and other easy plumbing jobs, drain fixing and stuff like that. All my tools for plumbing stay in this box, so I can easily just grab this from my workbench and take it with me wherever I need to go. And I usually have everything I need here, so all this stuff gets stored in one box. So definitely handy to have everything organized that way. Okay, so that's pretty much all the stuff that you need to get started. I will go ahead and take you in close here and we'll go through actually soldering a couple joints. Okay, so just to prepare to get your joint soldered together, obviously taking any stickers off of our copper fittings here, get that ready to go. So we have to clear off this oxidation on the copper pipe, so I'm just going to go ahead and use my tool here. Generally recommend keeping these spinning in the same direction. If you kind of spin them back and forth, you'll ruin your cleaner really quick. So I want to make sure that's nice and shiny when we're done here. Okay, that looks pretty good. And we'll do the same thing with our fitting. Okay, so once you've got the fittings cleaned up there, it's a good idea to take just a dry cloth, blow them out a little bit, make sure that there's no dust left inside of it or dirt or anything like that. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is just apply some soldering paste. Basically the soldering paste just helps the solder adhere to the copper. It also helps the solder kind of flow evenly around the copper pipe in the fitting, and it helps clean it a little bit as well. So just kind of, you don't have to put a lot on there, just get it kind of coated like a thin film on both the fitting and your copper pipe here. Also helps the fitting kind of slide on a little better. And go ahead and get your fitting slid on. And you want to make sure that when you're putting your fitting on that you can feel it seat. There's a little bit of a shoulder here, and you want to make sure that that fitting seats all the way down to the base. And I can feel it. It won't go on anymore. Right there, it looks like. And I'm going to keep this kind of at an angle while I'm starting to solder here. And with the solder, I usually get a good amount kind of rolled out so I don't have to get my hand real close to the flame. And I always just kind of curl over the tip of it like that. Kind of make a J. Because that way you can kind of easily, you don't want to ever be underneath it. You don't want to have your hand underneath it because you're going to be dripping hot solder. And this way I can reach around the back of that fitting real easily and get that solder in there. Now, the thing to remember when you're soldering copper is that this is not welding, it's not brazing, it's different. There's a capillary action that will happen, and it's going to pull the solder into the fitting all the way around it. So you don't necessarily need to run your solder all the way around. We're going to heat from the bottom, actually at a little bit of an angle. I don't want my torch right underneath it, so I'm going to drip solder in it. I'm going to heat at a little bit of an angle, facing right here at the side of the fitting. And I'm going to use my solder on this side. So this is going to be the hottest side of the fitting here. And I'm going to heat the fitting, not the pipe. And then this will be the cooler side. Once this side of the fitting gets hot enough to melt the solder, I'm going to keep testing it until it starts to melt. Then I'm going to pull my heat away, and I'm just going to let this run around here, and you'll see it'll suck right around the whole fitting, and you'll be done. You don't need to feed the whole length of solder in there. And so I'll go ahead and demonstrate here. And that's it. I can see that it went all the way around, and I got a little bit of a drip come down here. That means that it pulled that solder all the way into that joint, and it pulled it all the way around. Now, I just put another little piece right here just because I saw there wasn't quite enough solder in there, so I tipped it right there again. But once you do a bunch of these, you can pretty easily just go right around the top one time. It'll suck just an exact amount of solder in there to fill that whole fitting. And once you do that, you can go ahead and take your wet rag and wipe it off. It's better to do it quicker. The quicker you wipe it off, the prettier your solder joint will look. I don't recommend dipping your fitting directly into a bucket of water necessarily. I mean, you can, but it has potential to crack the solder joint. So that's cool to the touch now. So that looks pretty good. That's a pretty decent solder joint. We can do better, but that's pretty good. So we'll do one more here. if you have, you know, messed up with the wrong fitting on or something like that, you can always take these fittings right off. Once you have the fitting off, it can be resoldered again. You can still use this joint. You have just obviously will have to clean it up. You have to clean out your fitting again. Some people will say throw the fitting away, you shouldn't use it again. I've reused fittings all the time, and I personally never had a problem with them leaking, but that's up to you. Just run your cleaner around here again, run your cleaner in your fitting, make sure you flux everything back up again, put your fitting back on, and resolder it up, and you should be fine. So pretty simple process. Hopefully I gave you at least a general idea of how to solder copper. Alright, well hopefully that gave you a little bit of confidence to do some of your own DIY plumbing projects around the house. I know this is something that I found handy quite a few times here at my home. Some of the tools that I used here, if I could recommend anything that you have, if you're just getting into this, or even if you've been, know how to do this, but you don't have a lot of the tools, one of these little combo cleaners, and mine's getting worn out, it looks like I need to get a new one, but this has been one of the most handy things I've had, as well as one of these little cutters. These two things alone have made my life so much easier when I've gotten into some repairs and other projects around the house. So those two things are definitely a key thing to have. This little torch, like I said, I've had this for 10 or 15 years, and it's never failed me. So Burns-O-Matic TS4000 is the one that I have. I'm sure they make other ones, new ones, whatever, but excellent little torch to have for starting fires or doing copper soldering. So if you guys have any questions about the process or about anything at all that we're doing here on the Simple Suburban Homestead, please throw those in the comment section. I'd love to get a thumbs up on the video if you found it useful or informational at all. And if you have anything to add to the conversation, I respect and appreciate that as well. So if there's something you do differently or that you would add that people should know, please throw that down below in the comment section. I would love to hear that as well. We're always doing different DIY projects. We've got the aquaponics system here in the basement, chickens, other type of sustainable things going on around the Simple Suburban Homestead. So if you're interested in anything like that, please hit the subscribe button and follow along. We'd love to have you. Thanks for watching. Have a good one.